all of a sudden we see that they just issued their first ever BRICS bonds. Not a tremendous amount, 130, 40 billion. I don't remember the exact amount. The point is that they just issued BRICS bonds only to be purchased by other BRICS currencies. You can't purchase them with US dollars. And they're called like the Maharaja bonds or something to that extent. But these are BRICS bonds. The point of it is that, and I am very fond of the term logarithmic decay, which is kind of like the Niagara Falls, little by little by little by little by little, then bang, all at once. Well, that's what we've seen happening largely for the last few years, and especially since August.
In a recent revelation by Andy Schectman, the significance of the BRICS alliance's move towards a common settlement currency backed by commodities, particularly gold, cannot be overstated. As highlighted, the reclassification of gold as a Tier 1 reserve asset by the Bank of International Settlements underscores a monumental shift in the global financial landscape. With major economies like China, Russia, and India actively accumulating gold and diversifying away from the US dollar, the implications for the US economy are profound. As Schectman points out, the BRICS strategic maneuvers, including the issuance of BRICS bonds and efforts to trade in local currencies, signal a seismic shift away from the dollar's dominance in global trade and finance. Stay tuned for more insights on how these developments could impact global markets. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for the latest updates.
You have the Russian finance minister, Sergei Lavrov, who was saying, we're going to issue a common currency that will be pegged to a basket of commodities. Now, if you go back even further to 2019, what you see is something that should have garnered massive mainstream attention, but much to the same, tune that I've talked about forever, that our Western media doesn't talk about anything relevant or important these days. It was ignored, and that was that the Bank of International Settlements, Andy, which is the most powerful bank on the planet. It is the central bank or central bank. Very quietly. They reclassify gold as the world's only other Tier 1 reserve asset.
Right.
Now, when you realize that at the end of World War II, the US dollar and the US Treasury bond were the only, since then, really, the only Tier 1 asset on the planet, which is a riskless asset. In essence, if I lend you $1 million, write you a check, and you say, I'm going to give you a briefcase filled with $1 million in cash to hold, well, that's Tier 1. To me, that's riskless. I don't care if I never see you again. I got collateral. Well, in essence, that's what Tier 1 is. And when you realize that the Tier 1 assets have only been US dollars and treasuries, and then out of nowhere, 70 plus years later, they say, oh, by the way, gold is now Tier 1. When you realize that all the central banks, in particular, the BRICS central banks, like China, who's bought for 14 straight months in a row, and of course, India and Saudi Arabia and Russia, all these countries that are massively accumulating and producing gold, its Tier 1 revision has much greater significance. But when we go back to the meeting, I've been saying a lot of the things that people were talking about coming up to that meeting for years. And the three in particular that got the most attention, or the two, would be that, number one, they will issue a common settlement currency backed by commodities, most likely gold. And secondly, that the Eurasian Economic Union and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization would join the BRICS. Now, I've been saying that in hundreds of videos that I've done for years. James Rickards, who has a little bit of a bigger following, perhaps, because, he's partnered with Agora and they have a mailing list of 1 million plus people. And he publicly said this. And I asked him, and I said, I agree with everything you're saying. I've been saying this for a long time, too. Now, what I wanted to say to him is that if I were you, I wouldn't publicly say that this is going to happen next month in August in the first BRICS meeting, because I think when you do that, and if it doesn't happen, you diminish credibility. You go back and look at the things I've been saying in the nearly 500 videos I've done on this topic since 2019, 2020. I said this, and the reason I said this, look, you got the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative. It's the largest infrastructure project in human history, and it's 160 plus countries. It's 75% of global population, 50% of global GDP. You got the BRICS, you got the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union. They are largely the same entities, many of which are in all of them. They are largely driven by the same ideology and the same goals, and it is largely about divesting of Western influence, Western hegemony, and the dollar. And I said they will all join together. You look at a country like Russia, they're in all of them. They're part of the Eurasian Economic Union. They're in the BRICS. They're in the Belt Road. They're in the SCO. And what is the SCO? The Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's the largest regional financial and military organization on the planet. They are not someone to take lightly. And so when you talk about all of these entities, in fact, the president of Belarus, a few months after the August meeting, when it didn't happen, came out and said publicly, we need to hold a summit together to have the Eurasian Economic Union and the Shanghai Cooperation meld with BRICS. Well, this is one of the things James Rickards said. He said it would happen in August. It didn't happen in August. I said the same thing for 2 years. It's going to happen. The BRICS will back their currency with a common, or it will be a common settlement currency to begin with. It doesn't need to be a reserve currency because of everything in terms of settlement, like for energy and all of the BRICS countries that are now OPEC countries, in particular, adding Iran and UAE and Saudi Arabia on top of Russia. You're talking the majority of oil production in the world is controlled by the BRICS. So at some point, they are going to peg their currency to something. But if you see in terms of it being a reserve currency or a settlement currency, if all of energy is settled in another currency or in other currencies, over time, the lack of settlement in the dollar will erode tremendously the reserve status. But here, all of a sudden, we see that they just issued their first ever BRICS bonds. Not a tremendous amount, 130, 40 billion. I don't remember the exact amount. The point is that they just issued BRICS bonds only to be purchased by other BRICS currencies. You can't purchase them with US dollars. And they're called like the Maharaja bonds or something to that extent. But these are BRICS bonds. The point of it is that, and I am very fond of the term logarithmic decay, which is kind of like the Niagara Falls, little by little by little by little by little, then bang, all at once. Well, that's what we've seen happening largely for the last few years, and especially since August. But if we look at what didn't happen at that meeting, yes, they did not say that we are going to issue at this meeting a common settlement currency. But what they did say is that, well, in the meantime, we're going to task all of our financial ministers to all of these countries to go back to the drawing board and come back to us at the meeting here in Russia in 2024 in October and present your findings. In the meantime, you're going to trade in local currencies, all of these countries, and you're beginning to see that. We just saw United Arab Emirates do a massive deal, first one ever with, I believe, with China, using the Project M Bridge, as in money, which is it's a digital platform that allows these countries to trade their own central bank digital currencies amongst one another, sidestepping the SWIFT system. But if you're using your own local currency to buy energy instead of the dollar, which it always was since 1974, when we struck the deal with Saudi Arabia, we protect you and therefore you value oil in dollars globally. That's created a synthetic demand for the dollar for the last 50 years, as every country in the world has had to stockpile them to buy oil. Well, now if all of these countries start trading in local currencies, sidestepping the SWIFT system, which is the tool of the sanctions, you have a system that is little by little by little progressing away from the settlement status of the US dollar, which is a very big deal. Yeah, and although the things didn't materialize, look, they said come back in October and present your findings, but in the meantime, there's 200 meetings between now and October in Russia, each one of them related to the BRICS. They're all BRICS meetings before the big one. And we're going to see all sorts of developments happen between now and next October, let alone a month later, you have maybe the most important election in the history of this country. So we will begin to see things become much clearer. But I will tell you that it is my 100% belief that you will see a commodity-backed currency eventually that will, and what is gold? Oh yeah, it's the only other tier one asset on the planet. Who's been buying it all? Oh yeah, the central banks. Who produces more of it? Oh yeah, that'd be China and Russia and India. They produce more, they accumulate more. They don't export any, and they import more. And so these are the countries who understand the significance, not just of gold and silver, where a country like India has imported 400 million ounces of silver in the last 2 years. That's more than twice as much almost as on COMEX market, but they're doing it with all the world's commodities. And in trading to accumulate these commodities, if being bought from countries that are non-Western, many of them are trading in their local currencies.
Today, we delved into a crucial insight from Andy Schectman regarding the BRICS alliance's potential impact on the global financial landscape. From the reclassification of gold as a Tier 1 reserve asset to the issuance of BRICS bonds and the shift towards trading in local currencies, the ramifications for the US economy are monumental. As we await further developments leading up to the 2024 meeting in Russia, it's clear that a commodity-backed currency may soon reshape the international monetary system. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more insightful analysis, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.